relax the spine. And from there I go, if you want to do a couple other ones you can, but if you finish up, do the L5S1 to finish up. Okay, everybody, let's pop off my sweatpants. We'll start up on the feet, and we're gonna use the wall a little bit today. So if you need to situate yourself where you can just where your laptop's ready to be by the wall, you can just take a second to do that. But or you can just skip out on the first one, right? But we're gonna use the wall for a few of our mobility exercises today, standing. For our warm-up. First one, just gonna raise up onto the ball of the foot, squeeze for a second, come back onto the heels as if I'm gonna fall back. So try to exaggerate as much as you can, and that's where I'll use my hands to counterbalance. This is just for our plantar flexion and dorsiflexion, but this is essentially, you could use this as a strength trainer, bodybuilding exercise, even it's just like a calf raise, right? So now we go a little bit wider. We collapse the arch, build the arch, collapse the arch, build the arch. Knock kneed, knees out, back and forth like that. Then maintain the hips where they're at, bring the heels up off the ground, popping the knees up, right? But I move through the hip, the knee and the ankle. Everything above the hip stays in place. Okay, now you may not be able to see so well, so I'm just going to show you here, right? But I'm going to be in this type of posture against the wall, and what I'm doing is I'm letting my knee move forward and then back, but as I go forward, I don't want my heel to pop off the ground, so I keep my heel planted, and then I try to track over my second toe, right? I don't want my knees to cave in or to go out too much, so the general trajectory is over the second toe, and we go back and forth. So I just kind of lean into the wall, and it's all for the front leg. I'm not really worried about too much else. I'm just trying to get this dorsiflexion a little bit better. One of the questions for the upcoming webinar, I'll address it a little bit more, has to do with the pistol development. And a huge part of pistol development is dorsiflexion in the ankle. It's not what we think of a lot of times, but if the knee can't push forward, if we're too tight in the calf and the Achilles, then we can't drive up out of the hole. We can't get the mechanical leverage we need to produce the force necessary to squat on one leg. So that's the idea. Stability, mobility, strength and mobility. That's the basis of for me for health and fitness training. That with a good diet. Switch. 2, 1. Okay, now we'll come off the wall, feet together, and just our knee circles. And that's the beauty too of this kind of osteoarticular warm-up, right? Osteobone articulations are joints that you can do a very quick one, right? Depending on what you want to work that day, or you can do a more elongated one. And there's so much going on here beyond, like, don't think of it just as a warm-up before the workout. This is range of motion, proprioception, like the joint learning where everything's at in space and how to move better, and a figure 8 pattern. And one of the things I've always kind of like been fascinated by, I've never really trained it, but I've always, you always see it like in news channels or movies, the old kung fu masters that are doing the qigong, or they're doing tai chi, or you just look at when you see like a video of something like in China or something, for example, when you see everybody just doing tai chi in the park, what you really notice, they're doing this kind of artful dance thing, but it's the same thing when you watch people dance and that they haven't let their joints decay. There's an ease of movement. That's what we want. And this is a very more robotic way, less artistic way of doing that, but also we're not kind of glazing over things. We're deliberately working each joint the way it should move. So although this isn't burning calories or changing body composition, it's keeping the joints healthy so you can do the work necessary for that if that's your goal. But I think the pain-free body is what we all want. And I think this is one of the easiest things, now to the hips, that we can do. I literally do this every day. If you total up my time of doing just my joint motions, it probably literally equates to 30 minutes plus per day, because I do it when I teach, like a session like this. I do it with my privates. I usually do my own routine in the morning, depending upon what my schedule is. A lot of times I do it again in the evening. And I'm not just saying this, and I know it's the name of our service, Ageless Wonder, but actually I feel better now at 40, almost 41 now, than I did when I was in my teens and 20s, because I wasn't doing this stuff. I thought I could just, skip over it. Now stabilize. So as simple as this stuff appears, you can also always go a little deeper. You can get a little bit more awareness of all the joints, of what's happening upstream and downstream, switch directions of. So right now it's for the pelvis, but you can pay attention to what you feel in the knee, the ankle, the upper back, the mid back, the neck. All right, now we'll come back to the wall, right? We usually do this one freestanding, but the wall's nice because it allows you to take balance out of the equation. So the idea is, for one, notice how I come across the middle, I come out, right? Now it's the internal rotation, then I come back through. I'm not necessarily trying to lift my knee up as high as I can and balancing my pelvis, right? And then the opposing motion is I kick back, same thing, I pull around and I pull it down the front. But we'll use the wall, that way balance isn't an issue, and you'll find that you can, so we'll start on the left side. And if you do this correctly, slowly, trying to control the head of the femur inside of the hip socket, this is mild strength training as well. It could be severe strength training if you have an atrophied hip, but it is just getting this to move in a much more controlled manner. Almost all great kickers do something like this in martial arts. It's almost a prerequisite to make sure you have healthy amounts of internal and external rotation throughout the hip. If not, not only will you be limited in your martial arts ability, switch legs, you'll also quickly develop lower back pain and or knee pain if you don't have good hip mobility. switch sides. Now we kick back, then we pull it out and around to the front and kick back through. And switch sides. Okay, now, if you want, you can also hang on to the wall for this one, right? But if you don't need to, if you feel you can balance it okay, you just go abduction, side to side, front to back. Switch sides. Now, knee up, nice and loose, internal, external rotation of the hip. And a switch. Now, step down, turn those toes in, tuck the tail, lift the chest, the head back, the chin in, translation of the spine, reaching side to side, trying to take the ribs off of the pelvis. Try to keep the pelvis in place as you move side to side. Then we add the lateral flexion. Now, feet about shoulder width, hands up like this. When I stand up, I'll bend the knees a little bit. As I kind of curve the spine, I try to create a C shape. Then I come back up. So a C shape as I breathe out. Kind of like the standing version of cat-cow. Same posture, but now we do our marching opposites. And we want to go down and up with the head, right? I don't want to stay hunched over looking down, trying to hurry. That's a mobility exercise, not endurance, speed, anything like that. Think about pulling those toes up towards the knee that's coming up. Okay, now roll the shoulders so we punch them forward. You can let the thoracic spine move so the rib cage can move a little bit with this. I want to make these big circles with my shoulders. As I roll them back, I want to feel the shoulder blades coming down and back, then they roll forward. Arm circles. Switch directions. For our elbows, actually let's use the wall today. So for this one, what I do is I put my fingertips or my full palm with my fingers on the wall, and then if my arm's stuck there, it'll do this, but I'm trying to basically turn my elbow to face forward and then the face down on the wall. So this is for the shoulder and for the elbow, but don't let the hand move. Fingertips are better. If you find you can't really do it like that, just press into it, stand nice and tall, and then rotate. Like you're trying to internally and externally rotate the shoulder. If you ever get elbow pain, this can be a very good one. Proceed to just face away from the wall, bud. See how you're facing it? Like face away. So it's like, yeah, like your arms out to the side, not to the front. And switch sides. That's kind of how I make mobility interesting too, to be honest with you, is the exercises are all kind of easy. So you have standing stuff you can do, you have kneeling stuff you can do, you have wall stuff, floor stuff, hanging stuff. So it's like with strength training, you can use body weight, use a dumbbell, a barbell, a sled, elastics, same concept. You can use a lot of different, very similar postures, but slight changes using a certain apparatus change the effect it has on the body. But now for our wrist, we push forward, pulling the fingers back, and we make like this gooseneck, right, as we pull in, making fist, and we push forward. Let's go nice and slow on this one today. That's also something really important to do in your training sometimes, even with your joint rotations. Slow it down. Have a new awareness of the motion, of the tightness in the body, the weakness in the body. We can map it out better. Sometimes a little faster is a good thing, depending upon what we're going to do. Today, though, the workout, you'll see, it's going to be some mobility and strengthening, but everything's going to be a little bit slower paced. But you're probably going to find you start sweating profusely as we get more into it. Some of the postures will become difficult. Palms facing forward. Flexion and extension of the neck. And this one helps if you keep your teeth together with a better stretch. Left to right, if you're saying no. Ear to shoulder, lateral flexion. So feet can be close together, right, or shoulder width. We're going to do a couple different exercises here, right? So our first one is our 6-point shoulder. We go up, we go down the front, we pull back, external, internal, internal. Then we cycle through. We're going to break off on one of them as the arms go overhead into a forward bend, right, where we'll hold in the down position for several deep breaths, right? But I'll tell you when we're going to break off into it. So we got this cycle, then we got one more cycle, and then on the following one, when the arms come overhead, I'll open up and I'll roll down one vertebra at a time. So coming up now, after this, arms come overhead. On the in-breath, on the out-breath, I start by curling in my chin towards my sternum. My mid-back starts to curl towards my chest, towards my thighs. My legs are straight, my knees are locked.
When I breathe in, I come out of it. When I breathe out, go a little deeper. On my next in-breath, I bend my knees slightly, and then I start rolling up from the lower back to the mid-back, to when my head comes up, my arms come overhead, and I start cycling right back through that 6-point shoulder, right? Like I don't skip a beat. Slow and controlled. Try to have a neutral, upright spine when we're doing the 6-point shoulder. And really make sure the shoulder's doing all that motion for you. That's how we get better internal and external rotation of the shoulder. We're also working depression, elevation, protraction, retraction. That's the idea of the 6-point shoulder. We're working the shoulder in all these different ranges of motions. And it's the most mobile joint in the body. And the reason why is because there's little stability. So we want to try to get as much strength and mobility in that joint as we can. This is one of the best exercises for it. You could actually weight all these exercises to a degree. Each one's a little varying degree, and strengthen all those patterns. Last one here now as we come up, down, and when I cycle through, I'm going to go back into my forward bend. Hands overhead. And fold. Don't worry how far you go in the stretch. Just relax. Do the best you can. But when you come up, it's a smart idea to bend the knees. That takes the pressure off the lower back. Bend the knees as you do your in-breath and come up one vertebra at a time. Arms overhead. Cycle right back into your 6-point shoulder. Last round of this for each one. Last full cycle, the 6-point shoulder. On our next overhead, we'll break off into the forward bend. next in breath, bend your knees, come up one vertebra at a time. Arrive in that anatomical position. Try to feel a nice straight body. Then we'll widen out the feet. And we're going to get into the gravity squat, right? So, basic rule, tuck the tail, lift the chest, head back, chin, and maintain that the whole time. Don't start like this with the spine where we want it, then try to go deeper and let the hip go that way. Keep it tucked. Try to make the depth. So there is a part where the spine will start to create an angle, but not like this, by the hips pushing back as the knees push forward, and so you'll start to create like a rectangular box, the line parallel to the shin of the torso, okay? That is the eventual goal, but not by undoing the lumbar spine and put it into a state of lordosis, right, where we curve it. That's how most people squat deep. It's probably not a bad thing if you have a light weight or no weight, but when you weight that, it's a great way to really mess the spine up, right? So we want to do this really good. Keep the abs contracted, keep the glutes contracted. If you understand how to engage the pelvic floor, and even like tension here in the neck with the chin in, right? The external rotation, the pushing of the hands. We're going to do all of that, right? So try to keep all those things going for about 20 repetitions, right? And then we're going to switch into another exercise. We're going to do a few sets of this. And go. Now here, we're just going to turn our feet in, kind of lock our pelvis in place like when we do the translation. Tuck the tail. Now I push with one hand as I pull back with the other elbow. My thumb down, my palm by my face. Then I cycle through the other side. Try not to rotate the torso, but pull the elbow back and push the palm as far away as you can. And switch. 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 Last one, switch. Relax. Back in position for our squat, and go. Feet in, tuck that tail, and go. Now don't rotate the torso. Do pull the elbow back. Do push the palm forward. Try to keep the spine as neutral as possible, taking out all the curvature. One more each side. Relax the shoulders, as that's a great one to loosen up throughout the whole thoracic spine region there. Okay, let's get ready. And squat. Okay. And last set here. And go. Okay. Nice. All right. So now, this next one, it can appear kind of easy, all right? But the trick is to try to think the whole time like you can make fists or you can point your fingers, either way. But if you make fists, you're punching through the knuckles, trying to take your shoulders out the sockets. You're reaching through your fingertips, same thing, right? And we do small circles going forward, tails tucked, everything is engaged. Small circles, strong small circles out to the side there. Keep it going. Try to keep that motion constant. Switch directions. You'll feel probably everything in that shoulder lit on fire now. And relax. Let your arms just relax for a second. So these are relatively easy exercises, but it's always a loaded term. So with the next one here now, okay, if you need to bend the leg a little bit, it's fine. But you don't, and if you want to put your hand on the wall, it's actually recommended. There, like I said, today we're going to use the wall a little bit. That way balance is an issue. If you want to train balance, then by all means don't use the wall. So it depends on what you're doing, right? For me today, I'm going to put my hand on the wall, right? And what I do is I raise up, I go out, I go forward, as I go out. That's a cycle, right? Step down, and then I'll stay on that side. I'll cycle back through, right? Then I'll say switch. If you want to alternate each one, that's fine. That's up to you. But I try to point the toe, all right? Torso's upright as I go to the front, to the side. As I go back, if I want to stay upright, my leg can't go up that much. If I want to keep my leg up, right, which I do, I want to trace that line the whole time, I got to adjust my torso. If not, I'm probably going to hurt my back. And I like the idea of stepping down each time, regathering your focus, and then another cycle. Freestanding is obviously a much harder for the support leg, the one you're balancing on, right? And there are times that I will do just that. And sometimes I'll cycle through standing on one leg and try to get 3 full trips or 5 full trips without putting the foot down. that's when it's a much more intense version. Right now I'm working on slow range of motion and trying to feel my hip active all the way throughout. Let's switch sides. Have you been alternating? Just do your thing. The leg has to bend a little bit too if you don't have the hamstring flexibility. That's also fine. The main emphasis here when we lift up, hip, quad, right, hip. We're getting into the abductors a little bit now, the extensors, the hamstrings, the glutes, and it's really a great way to get those hips stronger. No equipment, kind of hitting the full spectrum of our hip motions there. Got our flexion, extension, our abduction, eventually adduction, internal and external rotation, all in one cool exercise. It requires nothing. Let's do one more. All right. Now, back to our shoulders. Little circles. This one, we'll keep switching back and forth. So switch. Now we'll go backwards. Really reaching through those fingertips or through those knuckles if you have a fist made. Switch. Last one we did 60 seconds. This one we're going to do 90. Last set of this. Switch. 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 And relax. Woo. Okay. Let's come back to the wall or freestanding, right? Cycle back through here. You know the exercise now. And now on this set, I'm not going to set my leg on the ground. I'm just going to cycle back through. So it'll be a little bit faster pace. I'm not trying to necessarily move through the motions quickly. Just I'm not having that delayed pause between a full cycle. Last one. And we'll switch. Okay. Nice. All right. So now, this is just one set, okay? So we got one set of this one, then one set of the other one. Most people, when they do this, it's just a sloppy, just fucking mess. I don't know how else to say it. It's horrible to look at. And it's not really been an exercise. It's just kind of hurrying through the motions because they want to get rep count. And what I'm talking about is this, the low to high plank. You'll see people with this in. And there might be a reason to do that, to warm up the shoulders. You're going to do something a little bit more ballistic. I'm not going to say it's, but if you want to approach this how I want you to do it today, strength training, take a look at the difference, right? I'll show you from the side. So I alternate my arms. My elbows are under my shoulders. Look how I put my hand here, and I use that to push me up. Then I put it down, then I go to the other side. I use that to push me up. So we're using this, instead of this herky-jerky, let's just see how many reps we can do, it's actually a way to develop the one-arm push-up. If you notice, when I pull back, I don't shift my whole body. Now as I push up, I lower down. So now it's more of the eccentric for this one. Then all my weight's on this one, I push up, right, down. So that's what we got to train, trying to stabilize on one side, going nice and slow. So let's give that a shot for about 90 seconds. And don't worry, you got to take a break in between, okay? That's the idea, is just to work on developing that shoulder stability, right? And that idea of the one-arm push-up. So think the hand goes where the elbow was, and then the elbow goes where the hand was. The abs should be fully engaged while doing this. More seconds. All right. Last exercise, okay? Gonna go pretty wide, one horse stance, 90 seconds. So let's get ready. 3, 2, 1. Try to create parallel thighs to the floor. And that means if you have to go to a narrow stance, that's fine. If you have a hard time stabilizing that, you can sit into the wall. Do a wall sit, just that isometric contraction. Freestanding is best, right? But the wall's fine, that's what you have to do. My knees are pushing forward and out. My abs are engaged. My chest is relatively upright. Head back, chin in. If you want to get kung fu-ish, you can, right? Pulling back and in to retract the scapula. There's actually a lot of value in that. Overhead squat posture. I'm just going to chill like this, halfway. Embrace it. We're done after this, okay? This is a stretch too if you keep pushing the pelvis forward, trying to stay upright. This is the way we develop a split, one of the key exercises. "15 seconds, and we're done. Stick with it. Come on now. 7 seconds, then we're done. 3, 2, 1. We come up and we walk it in, arrive in anatomical position. Try to just scan the body. If you need to close your eyes, you can. Feel any tension. Try to feel the heels tapping, right? Everything kind of close together here. Nice and upright. Shoulders down. Core engaged, glutes engaged, abs engaged. Head back, chin in, chest up. And relax. Okay guys, we'll get going with the webinar in just 1 minute. So if you're sticking around, feel free to ask your questions. And if you're going, we'll see you next week. I'm just going to get some water real quick. Okay. How's it going, everybody? So I'll get right into it here. I'm gonna have to make an exit about 5 to 11. I gotta teach another class, but so let's see. The first question that I got, and then you guys can ask your questions. So I'll go through the Praseeth sent into a couple, and so did Aaron. So for Praseeth, his questions are: I've been working on my pistol, usually doing them on a low chair or block. I find that I collapse right as I reach past parallel. I have a good low squat and can even balance on one leg, but something is lacking in pushing through this mid-range. Do you think there's anything I can do segmentally to strengthen this area? Yes, I mean, like all forms of squatting are going to do, whether you're using like a front squat with a barbell, whether you're doing just like a knee extension on the floor, like something just where, like, you know, I'm kicking into the floor and I'm extending my leg like in a down dog posture where I touch my knee to the floor. But that's what I was kind of alluding to, if you were paying attention when I was doing the warm-up, is the dorsiflexion, right? So when I go to do a pistol, say this represents my knee and this represents my foot, my ankle. If my knee stays vertical as I squat down, the tendency for everybody is they roll back to their butt, and then they figure, oh, I'm not strong enough. They actually feel their body lose all strength, deactivate, and roll back, and they flop on their butt. That's why we put a chair. But the chair becomes a default because I sit back into it. So the whole thing with a pistol every time is not sitting back, right? There's something that just became a set way of thinking with a lot of people to protect the knees, we keep them vertical. But then what you're doing is that you're ruining your spine most times because you have to hinge more and more to stay from falling over, right? And then when those same people go deep, and that's where the barbell crushes them. So your knee should be able to move forward. That's dorsiflexion, right? So if I can move my knee forward, look where my body gets to, and that's how I drop down and come up. But watch, I'll try to keep my shin vertical. So you just saw I just did a pistol just fine there. Now keeping my shin vertical, I'm done. So it seems like strength because you're like, wow, I'm actually pretty strong, and all of a sudden I get totally weak. That's where a lack of mobility makes you weak, right? Like it actually takes away your strength. So it's more of a mobility issue typically than strength. And there could be some strength required at the bottom range, but you can train that segmentally using like elastic bands and finding the weak point. So that's that. And then what can I add for conditioning work along with our group workouts? I'm getting quite winded in my martial arts practices. Also, when is the best time to do this for maximum conditioning gains, morning, evening, etc.? By condition, you mean like what people would call cardio? Yeah, see, I don't even believe in that. You're getting winded in martial arts because you haven't been practicing them enough. So whenever you come back to it, you're going to get winded. You could run every day and still get winded. I always tell people one of my investor was a runner before he got into jiu-jitsu, and he brought in his running coach who ran in the Olympics 2 times for Holland. He could run sub 4-minute miles. The guy was literally like the wind when you watch him run. He fatigued in jiu-jitsu in 2 minutes. 2 minutes. Had double hamstring cramp and lied there on the floor, gasping for air. His resting heart rate was like 30 beats per minute. He couldn't have been in better condition, but the neuromuscular efficiency just wasn't there. Most of what is conditioning, there is a cardiovascular issue or the ability of the body to clear lactic acid, but it's almost neuromuscular efficiency. Even runners, they're so good at it, it's not even conditioning at that point. They have certain factors that gave them the ability to do that, but it's actually just they're so good at running. That's why if you ever look at any marathon runner, you're never going to see a guy that's 6'2", 200 pounds. You'll never see it. Not a good marathon. You might see a guy that big run a marathon, but he's like way in last place. The guys that are winning are short, they're compact, they weigh about 120 pounds, and their heart's about this big. Like there's like basically a big heart and lungs on some like skinny little legs that run. So that being said, I do think running's functional. Hiking, I always say if you have access to mountains, hiking's the best thing. Trail running and hiking's the ultimate thing. Swimming's great, climbing's great, and running sprints, shuttle sprints, hill sprints, running up and down stairs if you have a high-rise building where you can run up the stairs, take the elevator down, do it again, put a weighted vest on, anything like that for 20 minutes in total time. So if I'm running sprints, it might be like a 30-second sprint, a 2-minute rest. I might do that for 8 rounds. That would be my workout. Maybe even less because I probably do form running beforehand. So I do like running as long as your knees and your joints can take it and you have good form. But I hate slow jogging. I think it's horrible for the body and you're just wasting your time. You're hurting your joints and getting in worse shape. You're training your body to be slow, non-responsive, bad reactions. And you actually, if you ever look at, there again, marathon runners, elite ones not so much, but look at most of the people that you talk to that are they run for fitness. They're usually skinny fat, if you ever look at them. And you look at somebody that does, like, say, just kettlebells or just follows a pretty good diet, they're harder looking, although they might only exercise for 15, 20 minutes a day, 3-4 times a week and follow a good diet. The marathon runner, it's kind of the thing when you do what they call chronic cardio, your body prioritizes storing more fat because you're doing these really long runs that require more fuel. And then it deprioritizes muscle because it says we don't need horsepower, we need longevity. We need to get better gas mileage out of this. So the body, that's why if you look, sprinters are the muscular ones. Marathon runners are the skinny fat ones. And the Olympic level, you can't really use that as your basis of comparison because they're all elite at that point. So you'll still see very lean Olympic marathon runners. But standard, if you look at most marathon runners, they carry a sheen of fat. You look at a sprinter with their shirt off, it's just like, muscles everywhere. Same with the gymnast, all the power sports. Okay, so This is from Aaron. What are some daily rituals, routines that you recommend for fitness and or overall health? Okay. Are you asking in regards like what do I do? Like what for my like daily kind of like habits? Like I wake up, I pretty much have the same routine every day. So I think health and fitness, in my opinion, everything's interrelated. It's like mind, body, spirit. So I don't try to really make a differentiation between them. I wake up every morning. I have a glass of water. First thing I do, right? I then use the restroom. I have a glass of water. I use the restroom. I almost always sit down and meditate. And because I sleep on the floor. I have like my tatami mats on the floor. My house looks like the gym here. And I have a meditation. I have a floor cushion and a meditation cushion on top of that. I have a whole little setup that I do. If my son wakes up, I'll go into the room where he sleeps and bring him out and let him stay in there with my wife. I mean, literally, it's almost like clockwork. And then I sit in half lotus. Full lotus hurts my knee, so I do half lotus. And I do circles on my cushion. I'll do that for about a minute one side, then I'll go a minute the other side. Then I meditate. My meditation I may do 5 minutes, I may do 30 minutes. Probably on average, I do 10 to 15 minutes. After that, I usually do, if I'm not going to train somebody, if I know I'm not going to come and train for a while, I'll do a simple osteoarticular routine, like what I did in this, maybe like for 5 or 6 minutes. I warm up my knees, my hips, I might do a couple little postures. Then I read. I make coffee, black coffee. Then I usually come and work. After work, I take a long walk with my son. I mean, this is all like ritualistic. The walk's usually about like 6 miles. Play at the playground with him for about an hour, come back, go work some more. Then when I come back from work, I take a nap for about an hour and a half. After the nap, I'll have my first meal. After that, I kind of chill out, go play with my son some more, come back, I'll work again. Then I make dinner for the family, eat dinner. Then I usually watch some retarded stuff on YouTube. In addition to, I alternate between stuff that I'm interested in. So I try not to make it too heavy at that point. I've done a lot of stuff that day. I've already done a lot of reading, studying, working. So I let my body kind of relax. Maybe I'll watch a TV show for like a half hour or something. And then I reverse it. I'll stretch a little, perhaps. Depends. If I feel really loose, I won't do it. I meditate again. And then after meditating, I read until I start getting the melatonin starts kicking in. Sometimes if everybody's asleep, I'll use my Kindle, my paper white one, and I'll turn the lights off if I have the lights on. Usually the hardest part is getting over to the light and turning it off. Usually I'll just pass out, book in hand, and that's it. So that's really a day of my life. And then what I do on the in-between, that's the variance. But almost every day it follows something like that. That's the script. So it's very ritualistic. I'm a big believer in that if life's always like this kind of like, whoa, whatever's happened in the day, I think it's hard to stay on track. So it appears extremely boring to the outside eye if they look at my life like, holy shit, that seems miserable. But these are all things I love doing. Like everything that I do. And if I don't like doing something, I'll replace it. Like with my food, if I don't like something, I don't eat it. I'll even throw it away if I'm tasting it. It tastes like shit. I'll just throw it in the garbage. So that's kind of one of my rules. I make sure everything I do, I enjoy. And then the routine I've created, I'm sort of a slave to it at this point. If it breaks, I don't get stressed out because I know I'll get back onto it. Something happens, life happens, I'll adjust. But I think that's mastery of life is mastery of time. And like I try to always control my time. That's the only thing I always give a shit about. If people waste my time, I'm done with it. Like I try to always make sure that. But in the in between, I find you have conversations. My training, like sometimes I'm doing martial arts, sometimes I'm doing like stick fighting stuff, knife fighting stuff, jiu-jitsu, kickboxing. With fitness, I'm doing bodyweight stuff, gymnastic stuff, running, sprinting, plyometrics, kettlebells. So the routine stays the same, but what's in the routine, that's the creative part. That's the flexible part. So I like that. I like a flexible routine. Let's see. Number 2, for those who have jobs requiring a lot of sitting, what should be included in their workouts to combat the negative effects? what are some of the things that can be done throughout the day? Number one, if you had to pick, there again, what I was saying, the osteoarticular stuff, basically, things should be redone in our society. And it's kind of like back when people used to smoke on airplanes. They're eventually going to come to the conclusion. The thing is, we just got so many fatties and so many sedentary people. It's like, imagine if the whole world was smoking. It would have been hard to convince people that smoking's bad for you. So it's kind of dangerous when people start talking about the dangers of sitting, because people are like, come on, it's sitting, it can't be that bad. But it's horrible, and they know it is. I mean, most doctors are calling it the new smoking, and then they're going to realize that it's really bad because it gums everything up. We need to move. So basically, I think everybody, if you sit in a desk, you should have set an alarm clock or just look at the clock. When it's 5 till, you should get up, do some joint rotations, something like that. Whatever, move, literally, I don't like jumping jacks, whatever. Something to move the lymphatic system, to get the body moving, not to sweat. And then you should, if you need to hang on to the desk or the chair, but you should squat down. Hold that for about 90 seconds. This is where this is sitting. If you ever look at kids, they don't sit. And when they do, they go like this. They plop down, and then you see them, they move around. So I know it seems annoying, kind of, because it'd be so inappropriate socially to take a squat at the dinner table at a fine dining establishment, but we probably should be doing so. It's okay to sit, but that's why I like a ball too. I don't have furniture in my house. My wife hates it. She thinks I'm retarded for doing this. We get into arguments about once or twice a month, but even still, I love it. I feel much better. And when I do sit, I tend to sit on a ball. And when I'm at a restaurant, I just sit down. But if you have to sit, I think you have to take breaks. And I think, and then say somebody really doesn't like you doing it when you're around them or something, they get all offended and they start complaining, then you just got to sneak it in. Go to the restroom, walk around the hall, whatever it is, just have an excuse to get up for at least 5 minutes. But I think that's very conservative. The more accurate approach, now they have them too. They're pretty cool. They have electric ones. They have ones that are just that'll come right up and right back down. And standing's just as bad, standing like a robot. It's not good for you. We need to move. So if, I'm working and I'm doing something, I can do a little bit of stuff like this, and you look crazy to the average person, but I would venture to say that the average person's crazy, just sitting there, right? Vicariously going through life and not moving. So I personally don't care, but that's also, I have a weird environment, right? That's why I created this for myself. For the average person, I know it's hard to do that because you look so awkward, but one of my instructors, this guy John Donner, he's a legendary jiu-jitsu coach now. He's become pretty famous over the years, and when I used to train with him, I saw him one day. He would usually leave the gym about 7, and I was going to train a client. He was on the other side of the subway platform. And he had, if you ever seen Kingpin, he had the Ernie McCracken hair. He had a big bald spot in the middle, and hair's a big comb over. He wears a rash guard everywhere. And he's over on the subway platform about 7 o'clock at night in this sweaty rash guard. And he's going, and he's doing judo throws on the air. And I just shake my head. I'm like, man, my instructor's insane. And I saw him the next day. I was like, hey man, I saw you yesterday on the subway platform. He's like, yeah. And I was like, you were doing judo with nobody. He's like, yeah. And I was like, aren't you worried that people think you're crazy? And he goes, they're watching me do something, getting better at my craft. I think they're crazy. I was like, all right, fair enough. So I think that's a good way to look at it too. If you know what you want to do and you know what you need to do, then it's not that big of a deal. And maybe you can inspire somebody to be a little better. Let's see, how do you feel about inversion tables beneficial for those with back issues? I've never used it, but the idea of traction, that's real, right? Medical people have been using that forever. I think if it alleviates pain, it's convenient for you, you like doing. I know some people use inversion boots too. The boots, though, I think would be kind of weird because I feel like it would put, I have a sensitive knee. I just think hanging by my feet would pull on my knee, so I've never tried it. The table, I've never just done one. And also, honestly think that idea of the decoaptation is probably the best thing, but if it works, there again, I wouldn't knock it. Like, it's kind of how I feel about acupuncture as well, or chiropractic. If it works, by all means, keep doing it. And there's a lot of variance with stuff like that too. I mean, for some people, it's just totally placebo. Some people's pain's psychosomatic, right? There's really nothing wrong with them. They just carry stress in pockets of their body that cause pain, and then it's this feedback loop where they're constantly stressed, so they're constantly in pain. With you, I mean, we know, Aaron, that's not the case with you. It's actually a physical thing. So I would say if you've never tried one, give it a try. Or if you do have one and it works, yeah, I'm all for it. I think there's a reason why a lot of this stuff exists, and like traction's been around forever. So obviously it can. I think the problem is when people go and get traction done, and then they do nothing else. I'm actually a big believer that's probably like the same with stem cells, with all this stuff. I think all these modalities probably have their place, but this idea of the scientific, that's why I'm not a huge fan of science. I know it sounds crazy right now, but if you ever read studies like on nutrition, they're all basically like fill out a survey card. What'd you eat today? Oh, I had eggs and bacon. Like, there's no scientific verification. It's not really that scientific. So it's the same with like an inversion table. They go, well, 14% of the people that use inversion tables had benefits. 18% got worse results, and then whatever, the remaining 68% had mixed results. So when you read that in the study, the headline says inversion table causes more back pain than it fixes. Let's just say that's what they do. But the reality is you don't know anything about how those people sit, how they sleep, the shoes they wear, how they walk. Do they lift weights? Do they not lift weights? Do they follow a diet? Are their bodies chronically inflamed? I mean, the study leaves out like 70 different variables that could all have some type of impact, positive or negative. So that's my thing, and I love placebo. It's funny, people say, well, it's a placebo. Who cares? If praying makes you make an extra $10,000 every day, then keep praying. Like, whatever it is, just, keep winning. So if it works, do it. If not, scrap it. And that's all the ones that were written in. Michael, did you have any questions, bud?
Yeah, a couple. So I adopted some of the stuff that we do to my regular fitness routine since the gym's open up again. But I feel like I could be doing some more things to alleviate some of the chronic tightness I have in my hamstrings and my spine. Is there any recommendations for how you think I could improve my programming or additional things that I could adopt to target those areas a little bit more?
What were the areas? I heard the T-spine, and what else did you say? The hamstrings?
Yeah.
So, yeah, hamstrings. So you think when you're seated, that's the thing, is you're halfway to full flexion of the knee, right? When you're seated. Typically we sit, I'll put my feet directly underneath of me, right? So I'm halfway into a leg curl. So basically, just even in everyday life, and then what happens when we come to standing, we tend to, when I stand, if I just tuck my tail and stand upright, that's put my hamstrings at proper length. So sometimes the tightness is because I'm arching the back, I'm stretching them, but they're kind of weak. So the thing is, typically it's strengthening. The one that we did in the warm-up, that forward bend, is an excellent one. You could also take a cable apparatus, like from a seated posture, and you can pull multi-directionally, or you can use like a leg curl machine. I like stiff-legged deadlifts better, even like single leg with dumbbells in hand, right, where you'll be hinging and then coming up, not making it the squat deadlift version where you're all the way down. So really just feeling that hamstring. That's probably a good way to get more strength. Because you do powerlifting, correct? Yeah, so my guess is that your body, and that's the thing, is you got 3 major lifts, your body, the tightness that it carries, only if it's affecting your ability to drop down in the hole for the squat or to hinge correctly for your deadlift, I would say you probably have the right amount of mobility for that.
going upstream to the T, because that's the thing is your body's smart. Like it says, hey, we're going to lift this heavy weight. We need more stability there. So I wouldn't try to over enhance it unless you're noticing that it's affecting your form on your lifts, right? You're going to have tightness that, like, say, a guy doing Taekwondo that can kick really high, he's not going to have. But also, you put him to deadlift what you deadlift, his spine's going to go flying against the wall, right? So we got to balance that out. And then if you start drifting away from powerlifting, you can then start working more on, like, I want to see how flexible I can get. And I guarantee you, if you can squat, your 2 times your body weight, you can do a split. The splits are everything about strength in the legs. Not really, but what you don't want to do is overstretch the tissue. The tightness that you developed is there. So there's specific strength training exercises that will lead to better mobility. Another one's the Jefferson curl. I don't know if you're familiar with that. You just got to be really careful with it. So you basically, I'll stand on a box and I'll hold like a kettlebell or you can hold a barbell even. But if you ever showed this to a powerlifting coach, you'd be like, that guy's insane. But a lot of gymnasts use this. So there would be a deficit. I'd be like on a box, maybe knee height. And I would do like a forward bend with the weight in hand. And I'd hold down there. And then I'd curl back up like that same thing that we did. I suggest just doing it with body weight. But you might get to a point you can do that. You just have to be very careful with your spine that you don't herniate a disc. So I don't really recommend that one too often. Then for the T-spine though, if we go up there, the bench press, right? When you just think about it, like how much do you bench? What's your weight right now?
It's very different now, post quarantine. But I think prior, my max was like 250, 260.
And what do you weigh?
140, 145.
Yeah, so you're almost pressing 2 times your body weight, right? So same thing. You've already told your body that strength is a priority over dynamic motion. You need to lock into place, lower it down, and squeeze with all your might and press that back up, right? So your nervous system, and how many years have you been powerlifting for? How long have you been doing this for? Lifting heavy weights?
Probably 6 years now.
Okay, yeah, so your body, it's ingrained now. That being said, you can probably get a little bit more thoracic mobility because I would say that typically the T-spine, don't get me wrong, heavy weights lock everything into place more. I'm not going to say that's not happening, but typically with the thoracic spine and the hamstrings, both of them, but definitely with the thoracic spine, it's seated. And the hamstrings tend to tighten too, right? So for the thoracic spine, what you can do, I'm sure you've probably seen it before. They call it a peanut. It's like 2 lacrosse balls on each side. It goes. That's actually good to loosen the tissue. You just kind of lie on it, and then you move your arms like this way, back and forth. You can kind of shift a little bit, and then you kind of adjust it, move it a little bit up the spine. That's a good way to get the tissue a little bit loose if you don't want to go to a masseuse on a regular basis. But I'll show you an exercise. There's a bunch of them. Literally, there's probably like over 100 exercises I've seen people kind of develop over the years, and they all emphasize thoracic mobility. This is probably my one of my favorite ones. So you just get a foam roll, right? And the thing is to go slow with it. And I would recommend, if you really want to see an improvement, so you can do the peanut, like kind of strip the fascia, the muscles along the side, where you just lie, and you'll see some people do crunches over it, or you do your arm motions. All of this is fine, and it's also good for the shoulder in and of itself. Right? So you do that with the peanut, and then you would take a foam roll. It doesn't have to be a foam roll. It could be like a stack of books. The foam roll is the best thing, though. And then, I've showed this before in class. I really like this exercise. So the rule is I have to keep the top knee on the foam roll, right? I put my palm up, and this is how I get the thoracic. I just don't do arm circles. This is doing nothing. I actually let my shoulder, if you can see, it rolls forward. Then it rolls back. And see how my thoracic spine's actually moving. Now here's the rule. I don't let my knee pop off to keep my fingers on the ground. I keep my knee on the roll, and I try to keep my eyes looking at it. I try to keep my fingers touching the ground. Right now my left shoulder is kind of tight, so I'm missing about an inch. My eyes watch the finger. I lose sight there, they come back around. Now look how far my shoulder rolls forward. Look how far my hand is past that one. And I just do this slow and methodically for about 3 minutes each side. So you can take the peanut each morning, and this is how I like, the general mobility is great. Everybody should do it. That way you don't get other lesions or problems. But specifically, if you know you have a tight T-spine and tight hamstrings, right? I could also show you some stretches for the hamstrings, but they're basically the seated versions of here, right? I go forward, I go this way, I go to the middle. That's essentially hamstring stretching. There's other things you can do. I mean, there's tons of stuff, right? Anything that basically pulls a straight leg. You can do a standing hamstring stretch like what we did today, where the leg's out there and you reach forward. But you want to hold those stretches for about 30 seconds and then alternate back and forth and do 3 sets. For the T-spine stuff, you can do that every day. And what you'll start to notice as you do it more and more, that's the beauty of fitness. That's like with strength training. When you're really strong, you just have to do a couple heavy sets, and the body's, all the nervous system, all the fibers are all turned on. So with mobility, as you get better and better at it and it starts loosening up, it might just be the peanut every other day, and then the foam roll arm circles every other day for like a minute of each one. And then that mobility will maintain, and then you can start working on other things. But those are 2 very typical areas to be tight. But the T-spine, it's typically fixed forward head posture, typically. My guess is that, like I said, some of your tightness is just from lifting heavy weights. And then the hamstrings, the only thing that I would recommend is don't try to improve a lot, like say your sit and reach or whatever. Whatever you're doing, make the metric, do you feel like your squat and your deadlift's getting better, right? Because that's your sport. What you don't want to do is get this newfound flexibility in your hamstrings. It allows you to drop like an inch or 2 deeper into your squat, and then you blow your back out or hurt your knee, right? Like a lot of times those limitations, I've seen a lot of MMA fighters, for example, like really tough guys, like, I mean, world-class fighters. And when you watch them like exercise and stretch, they're kind of stiff looking, but it's weird when they get into a fight, man, they can throw head kicks, no problem. It's just like the body maintains this residual tightness, but when it comes time to perform, it's like the body knows how to let the brakes off certain things to maximize power. So the body knows its inputs, and the inputs you've given it over the past 6 years are really heavy. So my emphasis would just don't try to gain the thoracic mobility. I think is a good idea, and you'll feel like, I mean, I don't think the bench press is going to mess you up. If you're not doing anything crazy like back arching type stuff, you'll probably be all right there. But that's the other thing. If you get better thoracic mobility, I'm imagining that that'll actually help your bench press. And if you get better hamstring flexibility where you can maintain the pelvis, right, but get a little deeper with a little bit more efficiency and the knees track a little bit better, that'll probably make you stronger in the long run. So I do believe that if you actually ever look at anybody that's really good at their sport, they have typically perfect mobility for the sport. So if you're lacking something, it's worth working, but just always, with the hamstrings, I'd be more cautious. With the upper body, I'd be a little bit more aggressive, because the thoracic spine has to be able to do that, right? When it does that in the bench press, it actually makes the distance you have to travel a little bit less, so you can potentially lift a little more. Make sense?
Yeah, thank you.
Hey, you're welcome.
Also wanted to ask about, I've had like, I think like tendonitis in my wrists for the past, I guess like a year and a half, 2 years or so. Just wondering if you had any thoughts on things that I could insert in my daily routine also to start addressing that a little bit.
Honestly, this, and they have something called an eagle catcher, right? You can put your fingers into it, it's elastics, and then it pulls apart. You just got to think like how, and then you can also do multi-directional wrist curls. You can do up, you can do down. So kind of the whole, so wrists are very mobile. We internally rotate, right?
The radius we rotate over to get on those keyboards and then move around all day. The shoulders rotate, the thoracic spine collapses, the head moves forward. And we usually correct all this, but this is the thing. Even if you correct all this and I'm nice and upright, like doing this, look at my hands. They're still flexing the whole time. They're never extending. So same thing I was telling Aaron in regards to sitting, maybe even get up out of the chair, that anatomical posture, right? And just against, like, just try it right now. Like, do 50, 100 repetitions, but every repetition, the trick is I try to really reach my fingers as far open as I can. And you'll see once you get to like 30, 40 reps, you start to get this overall burning sensation going up. And it's just, I know it seems so simple, but like that is what it is. That's most of what physical therapy is, right? It's just looking at what biomechanics sort of like got decayed over time and then reestablishing it. And so eventually what happens is that tendonitis might turn into carpal tunnel. The next thing you know, you got the brace on and all that other stuff, but it doesn't have to go that far. It's typically just think the hands are going like this, right? Like little lobster claws. And we need to open up those thumbs this way and spread the fingers back out that way. And then along the lines, if you just want to get some, bigger arms, wrist curls in all directions, whether you're using a barbell, a dumbbell, a kettlebell, like pretty much anything, a cable, elastic bands. And then, like I said, that little eagle catcher thing, you can get it at climbing places. Most people, you see, like they start thinking about their grip. I see this all the time with fighters, and they want to get a stronger grip. And mostly, you can do stuff to strengthen it, but a lot of times that's why they start getting the golfer's elbow, right? They start getting this really serious tendonitis because they're pulling and they're flexing so hard, when really what they need to do is they need to work the extensor chain and switch directions. That will take it away. Instead, they double down, they grab a gi, they throw it over a pull-up bar, and they start like a towel, and they start doing these towel pull-ups, and it makes it worse with climbers and all that. That's why if you see climbers, they have those little elastic things. Their grips that's the epitome of grip strength, a climber. But if they're working something, they're working the other way. And they might still do like some of their little grip training things that work the specific muscles, but a lot of it's to reverse the motion. So usually when you have pain, that's just a great way to operate. Think what's the opposite mechanic of what's causing the pain. Typically that's it's not so AB, but typically it's maybe like ABC. It's usually along that line. So you just got to reverse the path of what's causing the pain. If you're working at a desk, that's almost a universal one now.
I do the same, Eric, but I have elbow pain, so it's just related.
Yeah, same thing. It goes, pain tends to go upstream and downstream. Yeah, and it's also because you do jiu-jitsu. And then if you do pull-ups, right, or you power lift, that all starts to add into it. And also, there again, I'm not saying this is the cause of it, but it could be too, maybe the grip on the bar. I would think about that, like maybe the way you're gripping, or maybe you need to work on getting a little bit more extension. I know a lot of people, when they do front squats, they hurt their wrist because they don't have so they really try to push it up and it jams the wrist. So, and kind of what Erin, traction for her back, you may want to find like a farmer's walk, and just like after you do bench presses, that'd be good for the shoulder girdle anyhow, and just walk and you just hold on to those weights, try to keep upright posture, walking back and forth. That might be a good way to decompress. You might need a little traction on those wrists after you do heavy bench.
Awesome. Thanks, Eric.
Yeah, you're welcome. Aaron, did you have anything else? Okay. All right, cool. Well, hopefully this was helpful, guys. I'm going to hop off now. I'm going to get going with the class. But I guess I'll see you guys back here on Tuesday or whenever you join up again next week, okay? Have a good weekend, everybody.
Thanks, teacher.
Thanks, everybody.
It's a lot of talking. It's really...